This week on the Communicators, two perspectives on legislation in Congress that, if approved, would require commercial radio stations to pay a royalty to performers of music. On this program, we'll hear from representatives of both the radio and entertainment industries.
As chairman of the National Association of Broadcasters and president and CEO of Commonweatlh Broadcasting Corporation in Kentucky, Steve Newberry runs a radio station group that runs several radio stations in Kentucky. And he's with us this week on Communicators to talk about the Performance Rights Act. Mr. Newberry, how do you define the Performance Rights Act and what's your position on it?
Well, there is a bill before Congress that would charge radio stations a fee to play the music that historically we have compensated the artist or the performers by promotional value. But this would actually assign a monetary value to that, and certainly our industry has significant concerns about that and strongly opposes that legislation.
What would the monetary value be?
It's unknown. That's probably one of the biggest questions. Currently, we provide compensation to the composers to the tune of about $500 million a year. So certainly that figure is where you might imagine the starting point would be, but the figures are all over the road.
So to get to that $500 million, and every time you play a song on your radio station, you have to pay a royalty to a composer.
That's correct. If I could explain that relationship, because I think it's a fundamental part of our position. We provide compensations in a monetary form to the composers because they don't have the benefit of celebrity. They aren't able to go out and monetize the celebrity because, for instance, Jeffrey Steele is a very prolific songwriter in Nashville, Tennessee. Great guy, writes all kinds of songs that you know, but you don't recognize the name. But if I say Rascal Flatts or Brooks and Dunn or Montgomery Gentry, you know those groups because he writes their music. So we provide a cash compensation to the composers of the songs, but then we provide a promotional compensation or consideration to the artist or the performer so they can sell concert tickets, they can sell t-shirts, they can sell albums or CDs or downloads, or they can get celebrity endorsements.
Well, so Jeffrey Steele, the composer,
right.
Every time you play a song he's written, how much does he get?
Well, it's generally a flat fee per station, but it's about 3 or 4% of our revenue. So the $500 million a year is divided among 3 licensing groups, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, and then they have their methods that they disperse the money to the various composers.
What about the performers, though, who have said that this is a fairness issue?
I understand how the performers feel. They've been dealing for years with, frankly, contracts with their record labels that were not advantageous to them. Many times the artist created a tremendous amount of value for the recording industry, for the record labels, but their contracts, they come out of their celebrity without much money in their pockets, and that's one of the issues we really have the most concern with is the performers have come up on the short end of the deal. Broadcasters have held our end of the deal, but meanwhile the recording industry, the record labels are the ones that over 50% of this money would actually go to. So it's not so much performers as much as it is the recording industry.
Who started the Performance Rights Act? Who's behind it?
It's the record labels.
Why?
Their business model has dramatically changed as a result of the digital evolution. They used to sell you an album for $15. It cost them about $1.25 to distribute and manufacture. Well, people don't buy albums anymore. They unfortunately go and they just, for many of the younger generation, they just take copies from one another's iPods or from one another's computers. But even if they do go to the business model of downloading from iTunes or Zune or somewhere else, they're getting pennies on the dollar compared to what they used to get. Their business model is broken, and they're now looking for other ways to supplement their income, and they're coming to the broadcast industry.
As a radio station owner, do you think that performers should pay you to play their records?
I think we have a relationship, frankly, that has worked very well for 80 years, but certainly since pop music exploded back in the 50s. We have certainly valued the relationship we've had with the performers. We have helped create a lot of celebrity for those folks, and we have been very proud of that relationship. So we're not asking for compensation. We don't think that music should go to the highest bidder or that performance or airplay should go to the highest bidder. But if we do see this happen and radio stations are forced to pay, I think that one of the unintended consequences could very well be that it becomes a pure business transaction and radio stations are forced to do one of two things: expect compensation, or if a pure business investment, a return on my investment. If I am paying now for the money, you better believe that I'm going to be much less willing to take a risk on new artists or unknown artists, and I'm going to play those that have the most consistent performance recognition. And you could see that the new and evolving artists really take it on the chin from this, and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
If this act should pass and John Conyers, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is supportive of it.
Absolutely.
If this act should pass, what would be the immediate effect on your business in your view?
Well, we're seeing, as is every business in the country, one of the worst economic times for decades. And, there would be job losses, there would be a curtailment of services, because the broadcast industry, the radio broadcast industry, is a fixed cost business. My electric bill is not going to decrease just because I have to pay more to the performers. The fees that I pay to the Federal Communications Commission are not going to decrease. So the only opportunity that we're going to have is to really look at our employee expense, our community service expense, those tangibles that we have, the variable costs that we actually have some control over. The second thing that I think long term, it will change the business model. It will change the relationship between radio stations and the record labels in a way that I think will be very detrimental to the listeners, to the American population, and that's what's most concerning to us.
Mr. Newberry, are there any bills out there that support your position?
We do have a resolution. It's a non-binding resolution, but it's just a show of support that we have 247 co-sponsors on in the House, well above the 218 majority. So 247 members of Congress have sided with the broadcasters on this issue. They understand the dynamics there. And then we have companion legislation on the Senate side. We have into the 20s on co-sponsors there. And as you know, the dynamic on the Senate is much different. They're generally less hesitant to co-sponsor legislation. So we're very proud of that number as well.
So if you're sitting on 247 friends right now, this is a dead issue.
I don't think it's a dead issue. I would never be so arrogant or so overconfident to say, hey, it's over. I wouldn't trade places with my opponents right now. But they're very determined, and I certainly expect that they're going to continue to bang the drums. It's passed out of the House Judiciary Committee. Probably expected to do the same thing on the Senate side. But when it comes to the floor votes, we think that we have certainly communicated our message to the majority of the members.
This is a quote from Judy Collins, if I get your response to it. Radio is a multi-billion-dollar business built on our creativity, our passion, and our soul, Ms. Collins said. Collins and other artists who rose to fame singing other people's songs say they must tour well into their golden years, in part because they never got paid for all the radio play their music received.
And I would say that they had really bad arrangements with the record labels. It's a shame that the Judy Collins of the world, who had the celebrity, who worked so hard, had such bad record label deals that they didn't see the fruits of their labor. But it's not radio's fault. We created celebrity. You know who Judy Collins is because she was played on the radio. She still has the ability these days to go out and monetize her celebrity. I'm sorry that she is having to work into her later years, but the record labels have taken advantage historically over the relationships with the artist. Second thing that I would say to you is that music is certainly part of the mix of a radio station. But we have lots of talk stations, we have lots of sports stations, local news, community involvement, air personalities. So for it to be that the entire radio industry has been built on just one component, I think is an overstatement. But make no mistake about it, we're proud of the relationship we've had with the performers in playing the music over these years.
Satellite radio pays a royalty.
They do.
Why not commercial?
Well, satellite radio also charges a subscription fee. Radio is free. Local radio is free. No local radio station in the country charges anybody to listen to the local radio station. So if you want to subscribe to XM Sirius, if you want to subscribe to an internet station, that's certainly someone's preference, and they have that additional income stream that they have the ability to share. Second thing is the number of people that subscribe to satellite radio. Less than 20 million pales in comparison to the 235 million that listen to free local over-the-air radio every week. So as a result of that, the promotional value of a song being played on Sirius or XM has nowhere near the value of a song being played on local radio.
How has the digital world changed your business as a radio station owner?
It has changed it from a variety of ways. One would be that it's competition for listenership. We certainly have more companions out there competing for our listeners' ears. I have an 11-year-old son. When I was 11, I listened to the local radio station or watched the local television stations. Now he has Xbox, he has internet, he has downloads, he has iPods. So the entire digital evolution has created more competition. What that has given us is the opportunity to really focus on what our advantage is, and that's localism, serving local communities, not being a generic product that tries to reach listeners in 50 states at one time, but being the local radio station that in my case focuses on towns like Campbellsville, Kentucky, or Bowling Green, Kentucky, or Glasgow, Kentucky, and that's what we're most proud of. The other thing is that we're sensitive to the fact that people can get music from a lot of different sources from what they used to be able to. So digital downloads, and there is the piracy problem. We're certainly not advocating that and have the same concerns about that the performers and the record labels do.
Tell us a little bit about Commonwealth Broadcasting.
Commonwealth Broadcasting is a group of 24 stations based in Glasgow, Kentucky, which is the big city to my hometown of Hiceville, Kentucky, a little burg of about 175 folks where I actually live. We operate in 4 regions. We have folks there that make those decisions in terms of what the programming is and what we serve in our communities. They have that autonomy. So if my regional manager says, I really think we need to go from country to adult contemporary, that's the recommendation we follow. But I see our radio stations as community assets, just like a public library, just like a local bank. I think we're there to make sure that we're in partnership and we have strong radio stations that serve strong communities.
All FM, all AM?
Mix of everything. We've got AMs and FMs, predominantly FMs. We have 8 AMs and 16 FMs. Programming-wise, we have everything from ESPN Sports on the AMs to country to rock to top 40 to adult contemporary. We do what the community finds most appealing and what is most beneficial there.
Is it expensive to carry ESPN radio?
Fortunately, that is a product that, because of the relationship we have with the network, they have enabled us to affiliate on a very affordable basis. And you know, you talk about one of the other issues, that if this performance rights fee passes or tax or whatever you want to call it, if that does pass, I think a lot of stations will move from music formats to more talk formats, such as ESPN, or more news talk formats, for the very reason that if these fees go up, I pay significantly less for my ESPN programming cost than what I pay for the composers on those same radio stations. So, you know, now I have other obligations that I have with ESPN. It's a partnership that I'm very proud of, that we work very closely with. But I think there are broadcasters that are going to say, you know, wait a second, do I want to keep paying these fees for all of these music stations, or do I decrease the number of music stations that I have? And ultimately what that's going to do is cause problems for the entire artistic community. The composers will see less money because they'll have less airplay. That will have a negative effect on evolving artists because they'll have fewer venues for their music to be heard on. And as I said, the basic return on investments is, if I'm paying you, I got to make sure that every song that I play is well worth the investment I'm making. Now, because it's this artistic balance, I can take a chance on a local band. You know, we have a local rock group coming from my hometown in Glasgow, Kentucky, Blackstone Cherry, that's now been signed by Roadrunner, and they're touring in Europe. But we've been playing these guys since they were high school kids, because we were not making an economic decision, we were making an artistic decision because of the balanced relationship that we've had over the years with the performers.
What's the future of HD radio, and do you have any?
I do. HD radio is a technology that I think has a tremendous amount of value for the listener. The clarity is outstanding. What it really enables radio stations to do is offer an additional menu of services that go with it, more dynamic screens so you can see the name of the song, the artist, lots of different dynamic effects that go with it. We have one station. We're in the process of building other stations, but the economy, like anything else, has stymied it, and that's a challenge that I think our industry has right now. It's hard to make the planned upon capital investments when you see the entire economy being soft and broadcast revenues being as soft as they are right now.
Well, you're also chairman of the National Association of Broadcasters Joint Board, which is a radio TV board. What are some of the other legislative issues that y'all are facing?
Well, the performance rights or performance tax, the bill that we've been discussing, is certainly the predominant issue for the radio broadcasters. For the television broadcasters, we have significant issues in making sure that the local franchise, the ABC affiliate or the NBC affiliate or whichever network one might be associated with, that is protected for our local broadcasters in terms of penetration from satellite companies that might be importing distant signals into the market, making sure that the relationship between the cable companies and the broadcasters are equitable. You know, if you look at the viewing patterns on most every cable system in the nation, clearly the local affiliates are what drive a significant amount of the viewing, that and C-SPAN. And so when you see what local broadcasters do for the revenue and for the subscription base of the cable companies, we want to make sure that relationship stays balanced.
With the changing media and all the different outlets that people have available to them, do you think, are there rules in place that you think should be changed with regard to radio and TV and newspapers, maybe working together or joint ownership?
I think that we're in an evolving regulatory and an evolving economic model right now. So for me to sit here and say that they're perfect, no. Are they catastrophic? No. But certainly what is appropriate in 1997 or 1999 is going to be different than in 2007, 2009, or in 2017 or 2019. We have to constantly be adjusting that because the levels of competition are just immense. The number of internet services that come into rural communities. And if you go back to the original concepts of a lot of the regulations, those were because there were a limited amount of voices in the community. There were only so many television stations or radio stations or newspapers. Now, even in Hinesville, Kentucky, my son has the ability to log on a computer and find information from anywhere around the world because we have broadband service there. You have to factor that in. And the other thing that I think it's important for our association is we have to move toward looking toward the future, not just protecting status quo. We've got to make sure that the playing field 20 years from now creates a continuing, vibrant local broadcasting community, whether it be radio or television. So it's a long way to go around to give you the answer that we have to always be looking at how the regulations can be shaped to keep everybody healthy.
Is the FCC helpful or not to your business?
You know, I'm one of these broadcasters that has always had a great experience with the FCC. I haven't always agreed with each of their policy positions. But I would tell you that speaking as Steve Newberry from Commonwealth Broadcasting, the Commission has been extraordinarily helpful whenever I've had a regulatory issue or a facility modification. And speaking as Steve Newberry with NAB, we've had a terrific working relationship with the various members of the Commission. So yeah, I would say they are. May disagree on a position or a policy, but I think they're certainly very helpful to our industry.
And we've been talking with Steve Newberry about the Performance Rights Act. Are you a fan of the Four Tops?
I am a fan of the Four Tops, and I understand that your next guest invested a lot of time there, and I think that's a classic case of where what his group dealt with and the record deals that were made in the 60s, they're paying an unfortunate price for that today, and I look forward to hearing what his comments are.
And in fact, that's next. Here's our interview with Duke Fakir, one of the original Four Tops, who has a different position on the Performance Rights Act.
How did you get involved in the big issue of performers, royalties for performers that are played on the radio?
Well, it actually, I've had a feeling for this when we first had our hit record. In 1964 at Motown, we were very close with songwriters, and I noticed that they were getting these extra checks like every 3 months. I had to ask one of them, I said, wait a minute, I said, Brian Holland, I said, why do y'all keep getting these checks? He said, because that's from radio play. I said, woo. I said, when is ours coming? He said, no, that's just for the people that wrote the song or published it. I said, well, what about the ones that sang it and, you know, and made it come alive and put character to it? I said, that to me is like intellectual property. He said, well, it's not like that. So I talked to Barry to see if we can get some people to put up some kind of protest or work toward getting that done. And nobody was really interested. But I noticed people like Frank Sinatra have tried. A lot of people have tried. So when I heard that there was a major push and the performance rights was like becoming one of the outstanding bills, well, I was talking to some people who were very close to Music First, and I just started talking to them about it. They said, you know what, Duke? He said, you really ought to you ought to call them and let them know, you know, how you feel about this. He said, I think that they could use you, you know, because you make a lot of sense, and people would believe you because you're coming from the heart. And the way you talk about it, it shows a lot of people justification for this particular bill.
Now, when you say Music First, that's the Music First Coalition.
Music First Coalition, absolutely. That is the coalition.
And for those who don't know, what is it?
Yeah, it is a coalition of all the music companies and things like AFTRA, Grammy Awards, all the people that are connected with music and entertainment. And it's a coalition of all of them and some record companies. It's a big coalition. And finally, what's really so exciting about it this year, finally we see an open window. Now, this has been going on for 80 years trying to get this bill. And I don't know if you know about the bill, but I'm going to very briefly say the bill that exists is a 100-year-old bill that was instituted in 1909, and it was just for piano, music, and the one who wrote it, and the writers. Because back then there was no performance on records, it was just that.
Instrumental.
Well, piano, and the piano, whoever played the piano worked for the publishing company, so they didn't get paid, it was just publishing and writers. Well, when they made this and started spinning this, the NAB noticed the bill didn't require payment for performance, and they put up a big fight against it. Performers were trying to get it done immediately when they first had this. Performers meaning people that sing on the records, the musicians, and background. Okay, so that never happened, and it just kept on, and the NAB has always been very strong. This year, the other formats of radio are paying performance rights. It's not bothering them. They don't squawk. It ain't no big deal. Satellite radio pays performance rights. Internet radio pays performance rights, and cable.
And why is that? How did they come to the place where they're paying you, but
well, because
radio
when it was brought to them by Music First, or either it could be SoundScan, not SoundScan, there's another one that collects for that. They realized this is just justification. I mean, and let me tell you why a lot of them didn't even argue. Advertisers pay the bill. We all know that. Music draws people to the radio. I mean, talk does too, but mostly a lot of it is music. These people are the ones that hear the advertisements where they spent $16 billion last year. And that is because of the way the song is delivered, not the actual song. If you just played that song on the piano, just take for instance Bernadette. If you just played it on the piano, Bernadette is not alive. Just a beautiful little, but when Levi and the Four Tops sang Bernadette, Bernadette is real. So that's intellectual property. I mean, and it should have been that way, because that was not the intent of that law. It should have been that way when this was first started. And so that's basically where we're coming from. And there's other things about it. Let me see, right now there's a lot of misleading information and actually some lies about this bill. And it's being done by particular radio. And that's what people are hearing. They're hearing the negative. They're hearing that it's a tax, which is not. They're hearing it's going to run black urban radio out of business. The disc jockeys won't have jobs.
We have one black associated broadcaster here that's making those kind of claims.
I know. Well, that's because we can't tell our side of the story on the radio. They won't let us advertise. So the only way we can tell our side of the story is through town hall meetings and media, print ads and television and so forth. So, and what people hear is they're believing until they hear the true story and why. See, and it goes further than just what they tell. It's not going to hurt, first of all, it's not going to hurt black, urban, gospel, ethnic, or small radio. No way.
Why is that?
Because some of those small stations won't have to pay anything. The next tier of stations would have to only pay $500 a year to play all the music. The next tier would only pay $1,000 a year. The next tier, which is probably 75% of radio, would pay between $2,500 and $5,000 a year. That is not major money, and that's little money when it costs, because they will pass it on to the advertisers. That's who's going to do it. What annoys me is we've always been radio friendly, any kind of radio, black radio, ethnic, and we've always worked together. We always helped each other. Now, when this bill was brought forth by John Conyers, they just went on the defensive. They didn't sit down with us. They said, look, let's talk about it. What can we do? How can you all make this so we don't feel the crunch at all? And we would have talked about it, and we will still. They don't want to come to the table. The guys, the head, I don't know which one of the heads said he slit his throat before he sat down at the table and talked to Music First or the performance rights, on the performance rights bill, which is, neither here nor there. So the three formats that are paying, and the terrestrial radio is not. And it becomes large when you look at it globally. See, America is one of 5 countries that do not pay the artists. Every other country in the world except China, Iran, North Korea, Rwanda, and my loving country, they don't pay. So all these other countries that listen to American music, 20 to 40% of the music, whatever language they speak, is American music. they pay their performers. And what they would be paying American performers, they put in probably a escrow account, I'll call it. And they hold it there for a while. And seeing as we don't have a bill that pays artists, they put it back into their community. That's worth to United States artists and to the government, $70 to $100 million would be coming in a year globally. Taxable money, money that a lot of the older artists that can't travel and work like we, how
much money do you think your group has missed out on?
Tons of money, and I'm not fighting for that. But I go around the world when I travel, and I see some people who can't work, they can't pay hospital bills. I mean, these are artists, and they don't even have insurance to pay for their funerals because we've been asked to do that. And their records are being played. Advertising dollars are being spent on that money. That's unfair. That's a labor issue, and it's just not, there's no justification for not paying them.
You talked about relationship between the artist and the radio station. Radio stations might say, look, we play the song that's advertising for your group or whatever group involved. They buy records, you make a profit.
They say that, right. Okay, they say that, but for every time they played our records, our company had to buy advertisement. It wasn't free. We had to do concerts. I mean, but we don't talk about that because we scratch each other's back. Nowadays, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, our records don't really, them playing our records don't make them sell. Our records pretty much are sold what they're going to sell, you know? So it's not about that, as far as I'm concerned. And it never has been that. They're saying that because they're the only ones that can get to the people by radio. But we've always scratched each other's back, you know? Radio has never done nothing totally free. I mean, you know, for the community, yes, they do. And we love that. I'm not talking about them like that. But when they promote artist records, your company has to do something. They have to buy advertisement. Years ago, they have to do this. They call you, hey, we need a concert, da-da-da-da. We had, well, you know us, man. I say, okay, man, all we need is expenses. Don't worry about it. We'll be there. So we've done that, and we will always work with them. They could come to us now and say, look, I tell you what, why don't y'all do a commercial for this company? And just don't take the money. We'll take the money and we'll apply it to, okay, so we'll do that. And we'll take care of that royalty fee. So, it's just an injustice, and it's time for it to happen. Every other format is doing it, except terrestrial radio. And there is a 3-year moratorium because of the depressed economy.
So it wouldn't kick in for 3 years?
It wouldn't kick in the day it was voted. And it's moving. It's moving positively through the House. It passed the Judiciary Committee, which makes it pretty much all the way out. And when fall comes, we have to go work on the Senate.
One more argument that I've heard, or at least I've read about, is that, okay, fine, we do this, the record companies get the money, part of that goes into their pockets before it goes into your pocket.
Here's the story. Everything that we're talking about is intellectual property. What they're talking about, and they keep bringing up the record company, who owns the tracks? That's what they call the record company. A lot of artists own their own tracks. Whoever owns the tracks get 50% of that royalty split. The artists and the musicians get the other 5% goes to probably administration and stuff like that. But the companies own the tracks. I mean, so what? But a lot of companies don't own the tracks. A lot of artists own all their tracks. So it would go to whoever owns the tracks. And it's not, we get our royalties off of sales. We made a contract with Motown Records, and we get ours off of sales. When the sales die, we don't get royalties, period. But we have royalties in perpetuity, So, but there's, stops, fortunately, we still sell some. There's a lot of people that don't sell,
When, if this is approved and it's approved by the Senate, it's a 3-year moratorium. Ultimately, could you give an example of what type of royalty a new performer might get from a radio? Is it
I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue because I've never been in that. I can find. Eventually I will find out what it possibly be. Because it's not like writers and publishers. They have like one formula. It's like a penny per spin or something. This is different because you were talking about $5,000 a year divided between 2,000 songs, or so we don't really know at the moment. And plus, it hasn't been totally negotiated what the figure would be for the real major companies. They have to come to the table before we're not just going to throw a figure out there at them. We want to sit down and make it justifiable with both parties.
You talked about the history of this issue, but how has that changed also with things like people downloading music illegally
Well,
how does that change the game?
You know, not being a songwriter, I never really got into that yet. But I have people that work for me that work for the Four Tops that do, and I don't know those. But if I needed to get some answers, I could. I just don't really know those right now.
So what do you imagine yourself doing between now and whenever this legislation might come into signing?
Well, I see myself going to Washington, talking to senators like I did with Congress people. And after, I mean, you know, everybody has lobbyists. But with this, instead of the lobbyists, the real artists went to a lot of the Congress people, and hearing it from the artists, they took a different turn than if somebody's lobbying them. They appreciated it, and a lot of them jumped on board when they really heard, you know, the justification and what they thought was justification, you know. And a lot of them say, well, I'm gonna jump on board, but I really think y'all gonna have to come to the table because it's too political. You know, we're talking about one strong lobbying company over here and one strong lobbying company over here. Those words I'm using, they use other words. So he says, it's quite political. He said, but it should be done. It is a just bill. Kanye's looked at protecting a small radio and looking out for his artists. You know, people that have played music that people have been listening to for years and years. I mean, they don't make a bad, and all they got was $200, maybe $50 for the session. It's a labor issue.
Duke Fakir of the Four Tops, thank you.
My pleasure. See you all soon.
Don't forget that you can see this and other programs on our Communicators website. You'll find that under the C-SPAN series link at cspan.org.
Tomorrow on